Hey everybody, Keith Berns and Zach Louk here with Green Cover, and just wanted to give you an update on the state of pricing right now with cereal grains, in particular cover crop cereals, because there are some changes. There have been some price moves, and we just wanted to share a little bit about what has been happening in the market and why that's been going on. Zach is our main seed buyer now. He works with the majority of our growers and our other sources where we purchase seed. And so wanted to have Zach on to just share what he's seeing with current market conditions. So Zach, what are you seeing out there for the market conditions and price changes, particularly in the cereals that will be planted this fall?
Yeah, so kind of like a lot of the country felt this year once wheat or small grain harvest got here, there was a lot of variability. Some places had really nice crops, and some places basically had zero crops. And it makes it difficult when we're talking about like our cover crop species. They're so isolated to regions, some of them, that it just they're extremely affected by weather on those. So like let's just say Elbon cereal rye, for instance. It's a it's a fairly regionally specific crop. Like you're not going to grow Elbon in Indiana. Or maybe if you are, that's great for you if it's your rotation. But primarily, most of the Elbon is grown in central western Oklahoma and central western Kansas.
Yeah.
And this year they had everything but what they needed. um, from getting very minimal rainfall all winter to super warm temperatures in February. I mean, that stuff was breaking dormancy early, and then a super big extreme cold snap, not just a light freeze, but an extreme cold snap in the middle of March. And then you just kind of pair all that together with lack of rain up until harvest.
Then they got
And then, of course,
then they got a bunch of rain.
yeah, when you don't want it, and then it starts raining. So it was the worst possible situation for that Elbon crop this year. We had one of our growers planted like 1,000 acres of Elbon, and he harvested 1,300 bushel out of that 1,000 acres. Now, no, he didn't run the combine across all those acres. He just had one field to get some seed stock so he could go again next year. But like they're abandoning stuff. They started in May and they're still abandoning it now because they can't get the combine through it because the crabgrass has taken it over. So um, we're seeing a lot of pressure on that market right now, and that one it does have the highest percentage of price increase over last year.
Which, like how much percent
Well, so
wise?
percentage wise, now you're gonna make me double check my numbers so I don't say something silly.
It's like 23 or 24%, wasn't it?
33% off of last year increase,
Okay.
which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. Like don't take me wrong, that's a huge price increase. But what we keep telling people is like Elbon is a niche cereal. Not everybody has to plant Elbon, so that's good. We can reduce our seeding rates compared to Hazlet because the seed size, and I'm sure the seed's going to be super small this year, the way things are looking. Um, so there are other factors to play into it, but yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing.
So a big increase in the Elbon rye, but not so much with the northern rye, the our cardinal rye, the hybrid rye, second generation hybrid. What's
Hmm.
on there?
Yeah, that market is fairly stable. It ticked up a little bit following some of these early harvest wheat prices, but our price is up like 7% over last year. And honestly, most of that is in
And
freight.
freight, yeah, yeah. To get it moved around with $4, $5 diesel
Yeah.
is definitely causing. So people can still get pretty inexpensive, affordable rye. It's just not going to be the Elbon type for this year.
Yep.
So good to have options. Good to have options there. What about the cattle guy? Because cattle are such a hot commodity right now. A lot of people are going to want to be planting forages for grazing. Triticale is probably one of the best forage options for fall planting. What's that supply and market doing?
Yeah, that supply and market is is not much different than the Elbon market, um, for a stack of reasons. Again, so that crop does get grown in multiple places. So it's grown in the Intermountains, the Pacific Northwest, out east, north, south. So it is spread around the country. Um, but there are small pockets of growers that grow it. And when you start to pile small pockets of growers together and you have like one crop failure, say the panhandle of Texas, they had the same problems that Western Oklahoma had this year. So their crop was very, very minimal. Anybody that had dryland acres, west of Interstate 35, those crops aren't looking very good. So when you start to pull out those production pieces and tag that on to freight, that Triticale price is coming up too.
Yeah.
It's not coming up as high as Elbon or as much, but definitely feeling it.
And the thing with a lot of this triticale, almost all of it is protected varieties. So it's not everybody that can just go out and plant it for seed production. You have to have a contract, you have to have a license. And so
You have to
that
start.
limits the number of acres that get put in the ground.
Yeah, you can't just plant registered seed. Like you've got to start at the right place and
Yeah.
get started. Um, so yeah, and then you might have somebody call you and say, "Hey, this is too late for me to hay. Can I harvest this?" Well, the rules clearly say no. We can't just pick up acres like that.
Yeah. So would you say that the best advice you give people on triticale is if you know you're going to need some, get it spoken for early? Because I suspect even with increased prices, there'll be a lot of people, including ourselves, that are probably going to sell out of that.
Yeah, definitely. I would say anybody that is considering what I would call a premium forage, wintertime cereal, and that could go all the way to forage wheat, winter barley, winter oats. Like you need to be planning ahead for that. If you know you're going to have acres of that, go ahead and get that locked in early. It's not a scare tactic. We hope that we have enough to carry all season, but if you are counting on that for your rotation, it would be very wise to go ahead and get that figured out.
So you talked about winter barley and winter oats. What are those supplies looking like?
So our winter barley supply is looking decent. It's pending some quality stuff. I mean, with thin crops and late freezes, oftentimes it gives way to weeds, and then it's a battle. It's been a battle the whole way,
Yeah.
but I think we will have some nice winter barley supply, beardless forage types. And then our Cossack winter oats. It's too early to tell still, which is kind of weird to say at the 30th of June, the last day of the month. But it looks like we should have a decent supply of those Cossack oats, but we've got probably 30 more days before we really know.
Yeah, yeah, it's a late maturing crop. And wheat. What does the outlook look like there for wheat? The premium type wheats, not just going out and getting bin run wheat and planting it, which again isn't necessarily legal. You need to make sure you understand the legalities around doing that. But for the wheat that we have access to and are selling as cover crops, what's that looking like?
Yeah, so if you're looking for a decent beardless forage wheat, there's going to be pockets of the country that are going to feel a lot of pressure on this. Like I could see Texas and down south feeling a lot of pressure in this market. I don't think it's going to be as accessible. I don't think you're going to be able to just load up and pick some up from your local seed company, because there was a lot of crops that were just basically abandoned. Up north may not be as tight of a crunch, but I think the biggest thing is, planning ahead for it, making sure that if you're going to ship it and have to get some shipped, just to count that into your planning for getting it planted. I could see it getting short. You talked about triticale. If our supply happens to run out, that beardless wheat is the next most winter hardy cereal that we carry. So I think that there's going to be some people that flip over to that.
Yeah, for beardless type, because rye is going to be more winter hardy. But
Mhm.
if you're grazing, you really want the beardless types.
Yep.
ideally. So this is kind of a strange year because we see these cereals, some have taken a bigger jump than others, but the legumes, which typically have a lot more volatility, they haven't moved nearly as much. What's going on with winter peas, hairy vetch, some of the clovers?
Yeah, that's what's been really interesting, even into like the brassicas. Um, Most other cover crop species only changed by a factor of freight, which is like we talked about, very small on some of the small seeded
Few
stuff.
percent is all. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the legumes stayed fairly steady. They had a pretty decent pulse harvest last year for the fall type stuff or this spring. Since we moved to the production model that we're trying to produce for the following year, not the year we need it, uh, service those seeds earlier, works out pretty well. And as a matter of fact, like our hairy vetch, it's down a little bit. So hopefully that's positive insight for some of these guys.
Yeah, to talk about something that's less expensive this year than it was last year. This economy is kind of an amazing thing, and that's strictly because our growers had good years last year. They produced really good crops. And by the way, we I'm convinced that we, when I say we, us and our grower network, are probably the largest growers of hairy vetch in North America. I would guess we grow a lot of hairy vetch. Zach, talk about why we spend so much time, effort, and money growing our own vetch here in the U.S. and it's mostly grown in northern Montana. Some of it's coming out of Canada, South Dakota, versus the majority of vetch that gets planted is imported out of South America. What's the difference there, and why do we put such a stress on that?
Yeah. So the biggest difference is it's an entirely different plant. It's almost a different species if you plant them side by side or have grown any of them at the same time. I have yet to see anything that comes out of like South America, Central America that is anywhere close to the biomass production of what our northern grown produced stuff. Um, it just every time I've tried it and even tried it on my own place, every time I'm disappointed. Like you see a cheaper price point from that imported stuff, but like there's a reason why. Like when people say you get what you pay for, this is one place where I will tell you, and I tell customers this all the time, like you get what you pay for. So like our Winter Warrior hairy vetch, there's been tons of times that like you stand it up and it'll stretch to your chin, not even my chin, your chin. And I just have never seen that South American vetch look like that.
Yeah.
The there are pockets in the southeast along the coast and places like that that probably mimic that South American climate where that stuff is grown. But for the geographical region of the plains, this North America grown stuff, like it is grown and has been here and it just thrives in that climate.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, with hairy vetch, because most people that plant hairy vetch, they need it to overwinter. They're counting on it
Mhm.
overwintering. And that comes down to two factors. One is genetics. You can have really good genetics um, for winter hardiness, and there is a lot of good genetics in that. But the other part is where it's grown, because you can have really good genetics, but grow it in the south where it's not subjected to really harsh cold temperatures, and eventually it will epigenetically change to not having a lot of winter hardiness. But when you grow it in northern Montana, our guy that grows a lot of that vetch is, what, an hour from Canada. So he's way up there. It is a harsh environment and it's got to be cold hardy to survive. So he's got the combination of good genetics, really cold temperatures that are weeding out any of the weak stuff. And so the stuff that survives is pretty darn hardy stuff. And you mentioned we're trying to work a year ahead. So a lot of the vetch we're selling right now was harvested last year, which is actually way better vetch because it has less hard dormant seed. That seed has gone through its natural maturing processes. And so, that's one of the biggest reasons people don't plant hairy vetch is it has 8, 10, 12% hard dormant seed. I was just looking at our tests the other day, and they're 1, 2, 3% hard dormant seed
Yeah.
because it's a year old.
Yep. Yeah, and some of that is the genetics too. I mean, we have kind of kept back and continued to improve upon that. We do more of that natural selection type genetics,
Yeah.
but but still, yeah, I've seen hairy vetch tests like they're reading 18%
Yeah.
hard dormant seed. And what I remember, this is when I first started selling cover crops, I was very cautious to hairy vetch because if you plant something with that much hard seed someplace where you might have wheat in your rotation and you see it, the joke always was, well, you plant hairy vetch and your grandkids will have hairy vetch.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's a good product all around. I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah. How about winter peas? Some of the winter clovers.
Yeah, most of them have stayed fairly stable. Winter peas is again right in line with last year. No big crazy changes. You may have a few specialty clovers that might go up a little bit, but like your um, crimsons and your like our fixation, um, other berseem clovers, those are very consistent. Red looks like it's going to be fairly consistent. Most of the people are harvesting their clovers right now, so hopefully we'll get that market completely tied down. But I'm pretty comfortable with where it's at right now.
Okay. And then we talked about brassicas just a little bit, but do you foresee any price changes, supply issues with, radishes, turnips, collards, rapeseed?
I don't see any big supply issues right now. I think most companies, especially our growers that we're sourcing those named varieties from, like they're really good growers. Like that's what pairs a good retail seed company to that is getting really good growers. So I don't see anything that's going to be crazy short or just like a shock to the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. And a lot of those acres are either under irrigation or in fairly wet areas, so
Hmm.
there's generally less supply chain disruptions in those products because of that. So,
Yep.
well, any last closing thoughts to people here? It sounds like we're going to have pretty good seed supply. Some of it's going to be up some, and some are staying steady. Some have gone down. But uh, what would be your recommendation to people if they're thinking about fall cover crops right now?
Yeah, I would say don't be discouraged if you see a high number on something. Like if you're getting a quote for cereal rye and maybe you're not getting it from us and you get a number that's like, "Oh, this is very painful." Like just kind of look and ask questions. Make sure you get what you're trying to pay for. Um, because you could get some Hazlitt that's being priced as Elbon, but you don't need to be paying Elbon price for a Northern Rye.
Yeah.
So just be mindful of that. And then we say this from a sales perspective because it makes sales and operations so much easier. And sometimes it's kind of a joke, but like if you're thinking you're going to have a cover crop or a forage crop specifically in your rotation this year, start making those plans. Like, it, you pick up new acres, sure, that can be a surprise, but let's work through our rotation, make those plans. I would advocate for you to start making those plans middle of July. It sounds crazy early, but those crops are going to be getting pulled off. You're going to be busy in a combine. Just make those plans. Let us know how we can help you so we can get it. Make sure you get what you want.
Yeah. The other thing I would encourage people to think about too, because a lot of our customers do have cattle, you're going to be running cattle on that. Even if you spend, let's say, $30 to $45 an acre on a cover crop, that's only 10 to 15 pounds that you're putting on your feeder calves or stocker calves to pay for that. That's not much. So the value of spending a little extra to get the premium forages for grazing, well worth it right now with where cattle prices are. So just kind of keep all that in mind as you go through it. But folks, we're here to help. We've got a lot of seed, but we do anticipate having quite a bit of demand this fall. So we'd love to hear from you sooner rather than later, so we can help you out in getting a cover crop mix put together for your needs for this fall. So thanks everybody, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks.